The doors to the Viridian Tea House are open once more. Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. Well, this past weekend I had to deal with a cold, so I watched a lot of Sherlock Holmes, and several people were asking me which version. I was watching the Jeremy Brett version, and I have to admit, I've got a crush on this particular Sherlock. I mean, I love Sherlock Holmes anyway. I really do. But this version to me is my Sherlock. I love Benedict's version. I love Robert Downey Jr.'s version. Basil Rathbone. Why do I always get that mixed up? But Jeremy Brett's version, he has just enough eccentricity, so much Sherlock. You just thought that he was just born for the part. I do know that if you have Amazon Prime Video, if you subscribe to BritBox, that's all the British TV shows and movies, that's where you can access the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. But yeah, if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan like me, that version is really, really good. Jeremy Brett was fantastic. So yeah, I spent this past weekend going from the couch to the bed, from the couch to the bed. But Sherlock Holmes and a lot of tea helped me through, and I'm back to as close to normal as I can be. A little bit of news. So if you are in the Denver metro area, in Littleton and Aspen Grove tomorrow, Saturday, from 4 to 9 p.m. is the Paris Night Street Market. So it's going to be a ton of vendors and artists and all kinds of stuff. I will be there with books, tea, and artwork by Colorado artist J.W. Bullard. So if you are looking for something to do Saturday night, come on by. Like I said, it's in Littleton in the area known as Aspen Grove. And I'll put more details up on the video once I've done finished recording this. So today is not going to be a review, but is going to be tea and tales. Tea and tales, yes. And also, too, I'm currently reading a couple of books right now, so I really didn't have anything prepared for a review. So that's going to be next time. Excuse me. Ooh, excuse me. And oh, before I forget, two more things, and then I'm going to get started. One, a big shout out to the Conrad Press in the United Kingdom. You know, I all I wanted to do was just review a book about Napoleon by Mr. Gareth Williams, which if you have not heard of that book, I highly recommend it. It's called Finding Napoleon by Gareth Williams. I'll actually put the link on the YouTube video as well. From there, in reviewing that book, I am now somewhat working with Conrad Press, and it seems like every 2 days I keep receiving books from across the pond. So for James and for all the authors of Conrad Press, thank you so much. I'm probably not going to be buying any new books until December. You're right. But every time I get in a new package, I'm showing it to my boyfriend because he's probably going to read them too. But so far, what we have received from the Conrad Press, thank you so much. I will read all of them. I truly will. And I will give an honest review. So thank you again. Much appreciated. It really means a lot to me. It truly does. And just thank you again. And the other is... it's Lemongrass, one of the unofficial mascots of Viridian Tea Company. Hello, hello, it's Lemongrass. Lemongrass the lamb. I drink tea. See, watch. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Anyway, all right, Lemongrass. I will see you later. All right, so like I said, this is Tea and Tales today. Today's tea comes from the wonderful company of Bigelow. This is a green tea with matcha and turmeric. Turmeric has so many health benefits. Oh my gosh, it's one of those spices that I try to use more of. I actually used to have a tea blend that had turmeric in it, but I discontinued it. But that that might be changing kind of soon. But yes, this one is, like I said, green tea with matcha and also turmeric. Now, I will say for matcha, if you've never had it before, it's basically you're drinking the leaf. It is powdered leaf, green tea leaf, and it's used in Japanese tea ceremonies. And if you've ever come to my booth at a convention or an event or whatnot, and you see that I have kind of like this bamboo whisk in these little bowls, that's what you prepare the matcha in. And I tell people that when you have the brush, you kind of whisk it in an M formation. So you can have the best foam and the best taste. I absolutely love matcha. I love the taste of it. It's very grassy. It's not tart. To me, it's actually kind of naturally sweet, but then again, that's just my taste buds. But I adore matcha. And actually, if you ever do a Japanese tea ceremony, some of them have little candies that will be presented to you, and it's to offset the grassy taste of the matcha, because some people don't really care for the taste, so they have the candy and it kind of balances out. But I adore matcha. I love the taste of it. So thank you so much to Bigelow for this wonderful cup of tea. Take a little sip here. That's yummy. That is quite yummy. Oh yeah, also too, for the Tales part, this is the first book in the Snow series by Bobby Nash. Now, I reviewed this book before, and you can look at one of the earlier videos. I love Bobby Nash's work. I love his writing. There are certain authors where I don't care if they put out stereo instructions, I'm going to read it. And Bobby Nash is one of those authors. Every time, he and I have been Facebook and Instagram and social media friends for quite some time. And every time I'm looking at one of his posts, he's, working on this novel, working on that novel, or that short story, or going to this event. I know that recently he was at Dragon Con, which, man, if you've never done Dragon Con, I don't know the numbers now, but when I went, I think I went twice. The numbers were between 70 to 80,000 people, or maybe a very high 60,000. But it takes place in Atlanta, and it is 5 days of non-stop geekdom. I mean, you can go to bed, get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's something going on. So I know that Bobby Nash is always an author guest at Dragon Con, and he seems to have done really well. But yeah, highly recommended. Truly, that's not a con. That's just an experience. Yeah, I was actually telling my boyfriend about Dragon Con. I was like, oh my God, dude. I don't know the numbers now. It's probably like 100,000 or something. But they basically shut down a huge part of downtown Atlanta for this event. So, but anyway, Bobby Nash, he's always just been a mover and a shaker. And the times when I did meet him at conventions, I always truly liked seeing his name and being around him and reading his work. So I'm truly honored to be reading the first book in the Snow series. So without further ado, in Tea and Tales, Snowfalls by Bobby Nash. Abraham Snow knew he was about to die, and the thought of it pissed him off to no end. Everything had been going according to plan. Before it all went to hell, everything was moving forward as laid out. The meet was set. All of the details had been checked and rechecked. Every I had been dotted, every T crossed. It had taken him years to get this far inside, but he was finally getting a face-to-face with Miguel Ortega. The man was a ghost, a legend. Ortega was a phantom that law enforcement operatives all over the world had been chasing for decades. No one had even come close to catching the elusive Miguel Ortega, despite the fact that he was rumored to have his hands in everything from the drug trade to arms dealings and human trafficking to murder for hire. There was a good reason for this, however, and Agent Snow was one of a select few people alive that knew the truth. Miguel Ortega was an alias. It was a code name frequently used by less than reputable men and women who preferred to remain anonymous while keeping their questionable business dealings close to the vest. This alias provided the Ortegas of the world with a sense of security. Snow had finally made it past the middlemen and low-level goons inside the organization belonging to the Miguel Ortega he was after. That's how Abraham Snow, in his alias as James Shepard, found himself standing on the blisteringly hot tarmac of a tiny smuggler's airfield in the middle of a South American jungle, in a suit, sans tie, standing next to a beautiful woman named Daniela Cardoza. She was Ortega's right hand and was as dangerous as she was alluring in her form-fitting custom dress. They both stood out of place against the jungle backdrop. Snow didn't trust her, but he needed Cardoza to get to her employer. 1 minute, everything was going according to plan. The next minute was not so good. Time moved as though it was trapped in amber. The man in the white suit was all smiles as they walked to meet one another across the airstrip's tarmac. Snow was finally getting his face to face. It was the first step in the final chapter of his undercover operation. "Agent Snow," the man said once he was within earshot. It took half a second to realize what he had said. Snow did a double take. Ortega had called him by his real name, Abraham Snow, not the James Shepard alias he had been working under the past 18 months. How the hell does he know my name? "I think you got me mixed up with someone else, Mr. Ortega. My name is..." Snow started, but it was no use. He could tell by the man's demeanor that there would be no fast-talking his way out of this one. His cover was blown. Somehow, some way, someone had sold him out. The list of possible rats was small. Only a handful of people knew his true identity, and most of them he had known and trusted for years. His mind raced through the possible scenarios: a leak inside the Pentagon or the CIA, a compromised asset, or a mistake he'd made himself, a slip-up that had given him away. Each of these played across his mind in less time than it took to realize how deep in the shit he was at this moment. He was all alone. There was no backup close by, no one to swoop in and save the day. Snow reached for the gun tucked into his belt behind his back. Ortega moved faster. Still smiling, he pulled the Glock 30 from his shoulder holster and squeezed the trigger. Snow felt the first impact, but it wasn't until the second that he realized he'd been shot. The next thing he knew, he was knocked off his feet, flying backward through the air. Snow dropped to the asphalt, unmoving, blood leaking out of 2 very large holes in his body. A tingling sensation in his extremities told him that the blood loss was substantial. Despite the humid climb, he felt a chill run through him. He was dying. Ortega had only fired three shots. The first clipped Agent Snow's arm, spinning him around. The second missed completely. The third hit its mark, center mass. Snow stared up into a brilliant blue sky, punctuated with a few fluffy white clouds as blood pooled beneath him. Above him, Ortega and his companion stood and looked down at him. He wasn't smiling. He was smiling, but she wasn't. That surprised him. Although they had been intimate with one another, neither of them had pretended it was anything more than a physical convenience. For him, she had simply been another asset to get him closer to his target. Mission accomplished. He had found Ortega. Surprisingly, he didn't finish the job. After a moment, Miguel Ortega shook his head, turned and walked away, out of Snow's line of sight, presumably back to his plane. Daniela Cardoza stayed a moment longer, and he thought he saw sadness in her eyes, although he couldn't be sure of anything as he lay there gasping for air. And then she was gone. 1 minute with the tea. If you have your tea, take a break. Oh, so good. Thanks again, Bigelow. Thank you. He assumed she had a plane to catch. Snow's vision grayed around the edges as he struggled to catch his breath, then surprisingly followed the sensation of flight as if gravity no longer held sway over him. Trees and clouds flashed past his vision at dizzying speeds until gravity reasserted itself and he crashed back to Earth. And just like that, it was all over. All that remained was darkness and pain. Snowfalls! Are you hooked yet? Are you buying this? Are you buying this book yet? I can read more. In fact, I think I will. Chapter 1. The view was gorgeous. 19 weeks had passed since Abraham Snow had been left for dead on a smuggler's airstrip in South America. The week of surgery and follow-up procedures had been bad enough, but 18 weeks of physical therapy and recovery time had almost driven him mad with boredom. Now that he was finally free of the treatment center and all of his former obligations, Abraham Snow was unattached, unemployed, and happier than he had been in years. Waiting for him at the checkout desk was a small box and a note. He smiled as he read the short note scribbled there in familiar handwriting. You enjoying this? Okay, cool. Sitting outside the treatment facility was a candy apple red 1961 Chevrolet Corvette convertible, and it was waiting for him. Thought this might lift your spirits, the note had said, and boy, did it ever. Snow had loved this model car since he was old enough to dream about driving. His grandfather had once called this car the greatest achievement in man's history. Although he could probably cite a few other examples, he couldn't deny how great this car was to drive. He couldn't get on the road fast enough. All he wanted to do was put the shooting, the treatment center, and his old life behind him. All he had handy was in a duffel bag tossed in the back seat. He really hadn't given much thought to where he would go after his release from the treatment center, but now he had a destination. He decided to take the scenic route to get there. Hold on one second. After reorienting himself to the greater Atlanta area, Snow marveled at how much his city had changed. But he also noted with a small hint of pride how much of it had remained the same. He was enjoying his drive, but fatigue had started to set in. It was a sensation he was unaccustomed to feeling, but one his doctors had told him he would have to get used to, at least for the foreseeable future. No matter what the surgeon told him, he would never accept this limitation. He pulled onto the interstate and headed north. The greater metro Atlanta area was easily divided into two sections, inside the perimeter and outside the perimeter. The perimeter was Interstate 285, a giant loop around the city. Snow had grown up in the city, but spent a lot of time at his grandfather's farm just outside of Atlanta. It was a small oasis from the hustle and bustle of city life, but was still close enough for a short car ride. Snow hadn't seen his grandfather in years. Such was the nature of undercover work. When you go under as deep as he had, you had to divorce yourself completely from your old life. It wasn't easy, but Snow had learned how to compartmentalize the disparate parts of his life. He just hoped he could return to the life he had before. The farm looked pretty much as he remembered. He turned into the long drive from the road to the farmhouse. To most people, a farmhouse was a small, modest dwelling, but the Snow family rarely did anything modest. Calling it a mansion would probably downplay the definition. All brick and rock, Grandpa Snow's house had always looked like a castle to him when he was younger. Now that he was older, it looked less like something out of a fantasy novel, but was no less impressive. He parked next to the porch on the side of the house, the one that was used more often than the front door. The side entrance had always felt less formal, which suited Snow just fine. I'm okay, I really am. Okay. To his thinking, only visitors rang the front porch bell. After all this years he had been away, he He was supposedly a visitor now. I really can read, I just don't have my glasses on. Sorry about that. As he reached up a hand to knock on the door, it opened to reveal a broad-shouldered man in jeans, shirt sleeves, and a cowboy hat. He also wore a very broad grin. "There he is!" the big man shouted and scooped up Snow in a big bear hug. Snow winced under in the embrace, tried to stifle a grunt. I'm sorry, boy," Archer Snow said, suddenly remembering where his grandson had spent the past 5 months. He released his grip. "It's okay, Grandpa," Snow said. "I'll live." "It's just so damn good to see you," Archer said, motioning Snow toward the deck off the back of the house. "So glad to have you home." "It's good to see you too," Snow said. He pointed toward the white hair poking out from beneath his grandfather's hat. "When did this happen? Last time I saw you, this was a lot darker." Archer removed the hat to reveal a head full of white hair. Like his grandson, Archer's hair had that unruly quality that no comb could defeat. You've been away a long time, kid. The snowy top comes with the territory," he smiled. "Besides, I can see you're sporting a few salty gray streaks as well." Snow unconsciously ran his hand through his dark mop of unruly hair. "Thanks again for the loaner," he said, motioning to the car and hoping to change the subject. "That's one hell of a car you got there." "You like it? It's yours." "You don't have to do that," Snow said, grimacing. Unlike some members of his family, Snow rarely accepted gifts from his grandfather, and even on those odd occasions when he did so reluctantly. Snow did not want their relationship to be built only on what the old man could give him. That was probably why they got along so well. "Still a stubborn cuss, I see," Archer said. "I wonder where you got that from." Snow chuckled. "Yeah, I wonder. Must run in the family." "I blame your father." "So do I," Snow thought, but instead shook his head. "Guilty as charged," he said. "We'll call it a loaner then. You feel free to drive it as long as you need to, okay?" "Fine, Grandpa," Snow said, surrendering. "Fine, you win." "I usually do," he joked. "So, how you feeling?" "I'm really getting tired of being asked that question." Archer waved it off. "We don't have to talk about it," he said. "I should have known better than to bring it up this soon. Sorry, kid." "No, it's okay, Grandpa, really. I'd rather get it from you than from strangers," Snow said, and offered a pained smile. "It hurts. Bad. But I'll live." Archer nodded, but said nothing. He knew that sometimes the best way to get information was not to ask for it, but to say nothing and let the other person fill the silence. It was a trick he had learned as an interrogator years earlier, when he had been in the same kind of business his grandson had followed him into. He was thankful none of the other grandchildren took that path. Worrying about one was more than enough for him. He hated using interrogation techniques on his grandson, but he also knew full well the danger of keeping his thoughts bottled up inside. The kid had to let it out sooner or later. Snow ran a hand gently over the wound. "Do you know what the difference is between life and death?" he asked. "What's that?" "Half an inch," Snow said, holding 2 fingers the same distance apart. "That's it. That's how close I came to checking out. If that bullet had been just a half-inch over, that would have been it, you know? Just half an inch." "I do," Archer said. "I've seen more than my fair share of death, kiddo. You were lucky. I'll grant you that. Or maybe you got a guardian angel sitting on your shoulder. I got a lamb." "Either way, I'm just glad to have you back home." "Thanks. How long you back for this time?" "For good, I think," Snow said. "They benched you?" "No, but I'm thinking about benching myself." "Oh?" "I think I'm done, Grandpa," Snow said. "I've had a lot of time to think while I was recuperating. I realized I haven't really lived my life, you know? I've been pretending to be somebody else for the better part of my adult life. I think I might enjoy being me for a while." I can see the appeal, Archer said and waited. He knew what was coming next. How did you know when it was time to hang it up? Pretty much the same way you did, Archer said. I realized that I'd spent so much time in countries that were not my home, pretending to be someone I wasn't while dealing with people who did bad things. It wears on your soul, son, chipping away at the part of you that makes you you. I pulled the pin while there was still enough of me left inside that I could recognize. I think I'm there now, Snow said. I just wish it hadn't taken getting shot in the chest to make me realize what I was missing. God talks to each of us in unique ways, Archer said. Well, I wish he'd spoken a little softer. Archer smiled. Well, it takes a lot to get through that hard head of yours, kid. You always were a little too stubborn for your own good. I don't know what you're talking about, Snow joked. I've not been stubborn a day in my life. Now, my grandpa, on the other hand, please, kid, don't even start. I know all about your childhood stories, remember? Snow's smile faded as he stared off into the distance. I think it might be time to get out of the game while I'm still ahead. Archer squeezed his grandson's shoulder. Abraham, this is one of those life moments that no one can choose but you. Just know that. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. He shrugged. Besides, you could always come work for me. Snow's brow creased. Yeah, no, I don't think so. There will always be a place for you, Archer said, not just because you're my grandson either. A man with your record of service would bring a lot to the table. Don't discount the possibility out of hand. Promise me you'll at least consider it. I will, and that's nice of you to say, but there's one very important factor you seem to be forgetting in all of this. What's that? The president of your company hates me. Hate is such a strong word, kid, but an accurate one, Snow joked. We're all probably better off if I keep my distance. I think you're oversimplifying things, son, Archer said. If you just talk to him, I'm sure you two could come to some kind of understanding. Who knows? Maybe now that you're both older and more mature, you can sit down and hash out your differences like rational adults. Oh, I think we understand each other just fine, Snow said. Trust me, nothing's changed. You never know until you try. Then I doubt we'll ever know, Snow said. Can we just let this go? Archer held up his hands in surrender. Okay, I'll drop it for now. Thank you, but not for good. We will talk about this eventually. Of that I have little doubt, Snow said. The job offer still stands, though. Thanks, Grandpa, but I think I'll pass if it's all the same to you. And if it's not, Archer said, all the same to me, that is. Snow's smile grew. Then I'll still have to pass. I just feel bad about it. Consider it an open-ended offer. Anytime you're ready, kid, it's waiting for you, Archer Snow said. Now, come on. Let's get you settled in and go grab something to eat. I'm starved and I want to hear all about your travels. And that was the first section of Snow Falls by Bobby Nash. If you liked what you heard in Tea and Tales, I will have the links to where you can order this book, and I will warn you, if you do order this book, you're going to read it and you're probably going to devour it, and you're going to want the second and the third and the fourth book. But yes, Snow Falls by Bobby Nash in Viridian Tea House's latest, Tea and Tales. Thank you so much, Bobby. I truly do appreciate reading your book out loud. I hope I got the voices right. I have my own idea of what certain characters sound like and what they look like. I mean, even though the author may give us a description, of course the readers are going to kind of tweak it to whatever they're thinking at the moment. So once again, this is the first book in the Snow series, Snow Falls by Bobby Nash, and the tea for tonight is by Bigelow, and it's a green tea with matcha and turmeric. Perfect. Oh, and by the way, too, which I forgot, happy first day of fall. So here's to you, fall. Oh, so good. Well, that's all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed Tea and Tales, and I will be doing more of those. And if you are an author and you are interested in being a part of the Tea and Tales, please let me know what books you'd like for me to read, and I'll choose the tea to go with it. But you can just send me an email, or you can send me a direct message if you follow me on social media. And I would love to read your story here at Viridian Tea House. So, like I said, that's all I've got. But what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. You know, I never edit these videos, so all of this raw footage, this is just how I am. So, yay. But anyway, thank you so much for enjoying another Tea and Tales. I hope that your tea went really well with snowfalls. And much thanks to lemongrass, as always. You're so cute. So until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Raise your tea mug high, and I'll see you next week. Take care and bye.